Oh.
Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Triple P, TRIPPLE and I am your astrology pimp, your astrology prophet, and your astrology priest. And today's 7 Series Astrology Prophetics video topic will be what women want versus what women need. And the reason I'm creating this video is because I had a very unique experience recently. The other day, I was in the mall. And it was kind of, at first it wasn't so funny, but it turned out to be somewhat comical after I pretty much, analyzed the whole situation. But anyhow, what happened was I was in the mall and I saw this young man, this gentleman, uh, with a female. I assume they look pretty much, they look like family. I don't know. They could have been brothers and sisters. I don't know. But either way, I approached them. I just wanted the reason I approached them because they had such a look. They looked so spiritual and they looked so, both of them had locks. The young man had the locks on his head flowing, and the young lady had the locks on her head flowing. So it's obviously it looked like the lady was following the gentleman. I wasn't sure again if they were related. However, I because I assumed, they had their hair and all of that. I thought that they would be receptive to what I was going to share with them. So I approached the gentleman. I was respectful. I wasn't rude or anything. And I was cool about it. I approached the gentleman. And I tried to like reach out. In a very friendly manner. In a very friendly manner. I tried to tap the gentleman on the shoulder. I was like, hey, what's up? And then he stopped and he looked at me with like, with disdain. I was like, it threw me off because I know usually, women are kind of somewhat startled, when you approach them in some way, or they could be somewhat, you know, evasive, if I may say. But anyhow, so I was thrown aback somewhat. And then so after that, I said, okay, I'm going to try it. So I put my hand out to give him a little dap, what I'm saying, a little hand dap. And he's like, hey, I don't know you. I don't know who you are and all that. So by now I was like, I was really, really taken aback because I usually, expect women to be on the sketchy side. Most of the time you approach women are really cautious, or sometimes they're cautious and they wonder what you want and all that. But the guy, he was so uh, almost, I would say, rude. I wasn't disrespectful or anything of that sort. However, so I said, man, I saw you guys and I just want you to know I was doing this little thing, what I'm saying? You guys could check it out, just go on and Google it, what I'm saying? I wasn't even, and the guy was like, oh no, we good and we straight and blah, blah, blah. And the guy was like, he was like bodyguarding the girl, what I'm saying? He was like, blocking, if I may say. So I say, you guys are brothers and sisters or something. He was like, oh no, no, that's my wife, and he had such a bad attitude. So I said, man, okay, man, cool, man, maybe you guys can check it out. Some spiritual stuff on there, some spiritual lessons on there, and some spiritual talks and so forth. Check out the YouTube channel, something like that. And the guy was like, oh no, I think we spiritually good and all that. So it was very misleading because I was not expecting that from these individuals who had this look. That is why you can't really judge a book by its cover. That is why just because you see somebody might have locks on their head or whatever, that does not mean that they are spiritual. That does not mean they are receptive to spiritual knowledge and understanding. They could just be having these things for style and look. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying, do not assume that, and that's what I did. I went wrong because I assumed that these two individuals were more spiritual than I thought. However, the way they responded, at least the way the gentleman responded, I was kind of pretty much blown away. However, so I say, hey, check it out, check it out. And then, and they say, no, I think we spiritually good and everything. I said, man, at least Google it, look at it. You can look at I didn't really force or push them or anything. The conversation took probably 10 seconds. It was really quick. It was really fast. And so anyhow, I walked away. And I was so disappointed, and I couldn't believe it, because I was like, you know, that I was very disappointed, because it's like I was wondering, why would this gentleman, why would this guy respond so negatively about sharing some information about what I was doing, you know? It's like, and the other day, the very next day, I was walking down the street, and a Jehovah Witness guy, you know, they walk around and they have the flyers, the brochures, the booklets, pamphlets, whatever you call it, uh, the watchtower. So the gentleman, I was walking down the road, and the gentleman gave me a watchtower, and I took it, you know, happily. And so, and I like that. I like the fact that the gentleman who gave me the watchtower, you know, he looked at my image, and he probably know that I was on a different type of page. However, he still felt like, you know, maybe you could learn something, or we have some information that you might want to hear, and, you know, still check it out. There might be something that interests you. And I've received watchtowers from many individuals. I've studied with just about, I mean, I've done so much studying throughout the years. I mean, you name it, I've done it. You know, I mean, I took classes with Mormons, and this and that, and the list goes on and on. I never rejected anyone for their belief system, in fact, because everybody has a little of the truth. So what does this have to do with what women need? So the individual who did this, I try to figure out, why would he be so defensive? Why was he blocking so hard when I came there? And then it came to me, it dawned on me, he was blocking because of this female. And because what I'm saying is, most individuals, most women may appear. This is how women, or some women may appear, or men might think this per se. Men might think this. Men think that, or women think this too. Women, not all women. Don't get me wrong. Many women believe that they want a guy that is 15 feet tall. Most women believe that they want a man with $15 trillion in the bank. Most women think or believe that they want a man with 15 inches of wood. You understand? However, those are all objective, superficial things, and individuals do not understand what really will satisfy a woman's hypergamy. Yes, hypergamy is real. We're not denying the fact hypergamy is not real, because again, if anybody who knows the nature of women, I have a good idea. And for those of you guys who may not know, please go and check out my video. It was one of my very first videos. I think it's called, I think it maybe what might have been the very first video that I had. Is called why how did I get the name Triple P? And I think that video, again, go and check that video out. How did I get the name Triple P? That goes into a lot of my dating history, some sexual history, and things of that sort. But if you watch that video, again, that talks about how I got the name Triple P, Pimp Prophet Priest. And so those, again, are not cliches. When I was a lot younger, and I was into the game, and I was into, you know, the world per se, superficial things of that sort, you know, uh, like I said, I was into getting women. You know, I was at some point, again, was a young player in the game, a player from the Himalayas. You know, I did a little bit of, I elevated to become a pickup artist over a period of time. Elevated, and I did very little bit of gigoloing type, a little bit of mocking, and then I ultimately elevated to PI status, and I did that for a very short period of time. But either way, all of these areas of my life, dealing with women, I too also believed what the average man believes, that you needed to have this or you have that. And yes, these things, again, being 15 foot tall, you know, that does help. It's not going to work against you having $15 trillion in the bank. It's not going to work against you having a 15-inch wood. It's not going to work against you. But not all women want these things. That's what I'm going at. Not all of these women look at these things as being the be all, have all, and is all. However, those things, having guidance, instructions, and things of that sort, having success and all of those things, and having game, first, and we need game, having game and all of that, yes, they will satisfy hypergamy. and they will satisfy hypergamy. However, if you guys by now know, all of my videos are related to knowing thyself, knowing who you are and what you are at the core. The being of the self, the I-ness, the isness, the oneness, the true self is what these videos are all about. So until you know who you are, you will always be seeking some type of some type of objective thing, thinking that this thing is going to bring you happiness. So the women who do not know themselves, and this video applies to male and female, this does not necessarily apply to only females. However, I am addressing an issue about what happened the other day, and that's what motivated me to create this video. So again, so most guys believe that they need again 15 foot tall, $15 trillion, 15 inches. Most guys believe that, and yes, that is not going to work against you by no means. Being tall and attractive and with money and being good and bad, that is a big plus. However, that will only and having game on top of that, you would be considered what they would say an alpha male if you have all of those three things: look, status, and different things of the sort, social proof, things of the sort, style, and things of that sort are all, again, we are dealing with the objective world now. We're talking about the superficial world. However, what most individuals or most guys do not take in account is that we also have a spiritual side. A woman also needs her spiritual hypergamy needs to be satisfied. She does, and even if she meets a man, hypothetically speaking, if she meets a man 15, 15, 15, that has all of these 15s, and if that man does not assist her in growing in any way, shape, or form, becoming a better human being, morally, spiritually, that individual also run the risk of not satisfying her hypergamy. Again, most players have not thought of this before. Most players only think satisfying a woman's hypergamy only implies having style, having looks, being tall, having money, being good and bad, laying pipe. This is what most guys think, and having game. But most guys have never, ever, ever thought of a woman's spiritual hypergamy. That is why, look at, for example, you might not, most guys don't ever, again, never thought of this, and you're talking to a player from the Himalayas. This is not who I always was. I always didn't live this way. This always was not my style. At one point, women was my forte also as well. So I know the game pretty much. In fact, the game that I'm giving you guys right now is more game than the Game of Thrones. And I'm not costing you guys, I'm not charging you guys $9.99 as well. So please take this game and run with it. So this game is also for individuals who may not be so tall, who may not be so attractive, guys who may not have $1 trillion in the bank, guys who may not have all these things. This is the game that yes, you still need to work on yourself. I'm not saying that this is the game of all games, but however, this is one of the games that is most likely overlooked, if I may say, or taken for granted. Most individuals believe, again, if they supply a woman financially and maybe mentally and put a roof over her head and things of that sort, and they lay good pipe. I don't know if you guys see this. Look at the stingray. Sorry, there's the pause. You see the stingray right there? The pretty one is coming back. Yeah, it's going away. You see it? I hope you guys see it. But anyhow, it's gone now. But anyhow, back to what I was saying. Again, so most of you guys who who believe that laying pipe is all that matters, and putting roof over a woman's head and providing material things, breaking bags and Chanel purses and red bottoms. Yes, that is good. That is good for to some degree. However, we tend to neglect the soul, the spirit of a woman, and that is what I'm talking about. That is why the Bible, yes, as Jesus Christos, Joshua said, man should not live by bread alone. And that is what most men do. Most men provide only bread for their women to eat. They give them some type of material things, and they believe that that is the ultimate being. However, again, if you do not satisfy a woman's spiritual hypergamy, you also run the risk of actually losing that woman as well. Believe it or not, you might not think so, but again, all players, any players who's watching this video, I want you to really ask yourself and think, if you think that all of the objects could supersede spirituality, that their game is more powerful than God, their game is more powerful than helping someone to grow spiritually and morally. That is what women need. Women think that they want 15-foot tall men. They think that they want $15 trillion. They think that they want 15 inches. That's what they think, but they do not know what they really want because they do not know who they are. And if they knew who they really were, this is why these videos are for men and women, but however, I'm speaking about women specifically today. Because if that woman knew who she was, who she truly is, the core essence of who she is, then she would know exactly what type of man she needed. Because some women, a lot of women, especially attractive women, will tell you that they've had just about every man in this lifetime. They've had broke men, they've had rich men, they've had poor men, they've had short men, they've had tall men, they've had all these different type of men, and none of these men seem to make it until the end. All of these men fall short of the glory of God at some point. So what I'm saying to you is, unless you are feeding your woman spiritually as well. Now, if you have the 350s, like I said, 15 foot, 15 trillion dollars, 15 inches, and you have game, and you are feeding your woman with spirituality, and you helping her become a better person, and you're not just having her for some spiritual eye candy or trophy, then in the manosphere you will be considered the alpha male of all alpha males. You know what I'm saying? But the average alpha male does not think about giving women spiritual instructions or spiritual guidance, because they too themselves are lost as well. The man does not know who he is, what he is, so therefore he cannot teach the woman who she is and what she is as well. And I assure you, just like the seven deadly sins, greed, lust, and all of these things, and pride, whatever the case may be, if you teach a woman, or anyone for that matter of fact, if you are a spiritual man, a spiritual leader, and you teach a woman about the dangers of greed and different things, and she will no longer desire to have 10,000 places. She might only desire to have 4,000. She might not desire to have a man with $15 trillion. She might desire a man that only has $5 trillion in the bank. You understand me? She might not desire a man. She might not necessarily need a man with 15 inches anymore. She might settle for 9 or 10. You understand me? So the moral of that story is, being sarcastically, the moral of that story is, because the man does not know who he is, he cannot be a true leader. He cannot lead the woman to the promised land. Therefore, he will always fall short. And the woman will also, no matter what the man does, the man will always fall short in some way, some shape or form, because the woman will always feel like she needs more. She needs this, she needs that, but she does not know herself. So she thinks that finding a man with material possessions, and if that man purchases things for her, does things for her, that's going to make her happy. But because she's not aware of who she is misleading her happiness and misguided her happiness in the wrong direction. And when she finds a man who gives her these things, then she might be temporarily happy with the Birkin bag and different things of the sort, the Chanel purse and the perfume and so forth and so on. She may be temporarily happy, but over a period of time, all women will tell you that they're not gonna really, after the gifts, the newness of the gift fades away, their happiness tends to fade away as well. So what I'm saying to you guys is, yes, hypergamy is true. It is true. Women do need men to look up to. That's why women love their fathers so much, especially if the father was in their lives and the father did things for them. Women look up to their fathers and so forth and so on. So, however, if you are a successful man, you are doing things and you have goals and aspirations of what, yes, women will look up to you and they will desire you if you have a certain amount of prestige and a certain amount of social value or SMV, sexual market value, things of that sort. Yes, they will satisfy the hypergamy for some time, giving instructions, having the female helping you or doing things with, or whatever the case may be. You guys have joint ventures, things of that sort. But if you are not doing anything for that woman spiritually, you still run the risk of not satisfying hypergamy 110%. And all players who are watching this video, ask yourself if this sounds and this makes sense. Do you think that all of the material things, again, your success, your this and your that, your looks, your talents, your height, your career, your wood, all of these things. Do you think all of these things are more powerful than spirituality, than giving a woman some sense of guidance and direction to lead her in the right path of righteousness? Do you think that this game that we have is more powerful than spirituality, than leading the woman into developing more moral traits and things of that sort? And if you do believe that, you're delusional, and you're hearing this from a former PI. So I know what I'm talking about. You understand me? I know the game more than anybody else. And this game, like I said, that I'm giving you guys, this game is more game than the game of tune. And I have pulled more women than records have pulled cars. You understand what I'm saying? That's just the PI in me that's coming out, slipping out a little bit. Because again, like I said, they call me Triple P. You see what I'm saying? Pin Prophet Priest. They don't call me Pastor Prophet Priest. They don't call me Pope Pastor Prophet Priest. They don't call me Piety and Pious Prophet and Priest. They call me Pimp Prophet and Priest for a reason. However, I also try to teach young men how to help young men to sustain their relationships, not only to try to get goals and things of the sort, but you must be a spiritual leader as well. So if you are not guiding or leading the woman in a particular spiritual direction, you are also subject to lose that woman once she come across someone who has some type of spiritual light, because she's going to see that light in that man, and then no matter what money you have or how much money you think you have to possess, yes, she might still stick around and do to get the money or whatever the case may be, but I guarantee you she's going to say something is missing. Because if you look at it, think about this. For example, look at, if you go to church, your pastor would be a good example. Your pastor, look at the women in church. Look how devoted they are to their pastors. Look at how these women loves their pastor. Most women love their pastors more than they love their husbands, and that's the God honest truth. If their pastors told them to do something, they would be there, and they would do that in a heartbeat. But if their husband tell them, I don't know why is that? Because the pastor gives them some sort of spiritual guidance. The woman thinks she wants all of these things from a man, but she really wants a man that could help to lead her and guide her in the right direction. Yes, she wants a man that has, everybody wants to find the most attractive mate as much as they can. Yes, everybody wants to have the most relaxed life and financial life as much as they can. In most cases, not all people, but in most cases, looks do matters, height does matter, sex does matter, job does matter. However, what I'm saying is, because we do not know who we are, we tend to misplace our desires onto material things. So these women and men tend to place their desires on the man or the woman having certain attributes, and if they do not have these attributes, they tend to fall short. Back to the pastor. So the pastor, for example, if you are a guy, I'm giving you an example. If you are a guy and you're doing foolishness in your relationship, you might be married, you might have been married for 10, 15 years, and you been doing a bunch of foolishness. You was going out every night getting drunk, coming home drunk. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with drinking, nothing wrong with having your friends or whatever. I'm not saying you're overdoing something, you're being violent, you're just being disrespectful, you're being harmful to the kids, and you're just doing wrong. Wrong. And if you continue to do wrong, that woman might stay with you for X amount of time because of security reasons. She needs you because you help pay the bills and different things of that sort. But I guarantee you, if she goes to her pastor and her pastor tell you, leave that man, that woman will leave you. If she loves her pastor, she loves her spiritual leader, that woman will leave you. No matter how long you've been with that woman, because the pastor gives the woman some type of spiritual sustenance. That's like I said, just Joshua, Jesus said, man should not live by bread alone. And that is what most men do. We are giving women only bread. And some men are only giving women crumbs for at best. Some men are just giving women nothing for the most part. But however, the pastor is giving the woman spiritual guidance and spiritual instructions. So the female would look at the pastor more so as a spiritual leader than her own husband. So that should tell you itself what trumps what. Does the game, does the 15 trump spiritual truth, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding? No, the game does not. We see this example again Look at, for example, now the story of Adam and Eve. I'm going to use the story of Adam and Eve, for example. Now the story of Adam and Eve of being translated into all different type of interpretations. This is just an interpretation to express the fact of hypergamy. I'm not saying this is a literal thing. I'm not saying this is what happened, but we could look at it from a hypergamous perspective. When Adam and Eve was in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve was in the Garden of Eden. I am sure Eve was one of the most beautiful women in the world. Eve had all the looks, and again, this is all hypothetical. I'm not saying none of this is literal because I don't want anybody to say, "Oh, he's talking foolishness about the Bible." No, I am not. You know what I'm saying? And again, this is just a translation to make my point across about the power of spiritual hypergamy. And this, what I'm about to say, is not going to be pretty much traditional anyhow. But anyhow, back to what I was saying. So Eve was one of the most beautiful women on the planet, and I am sure Eve had no physical blemishes. Eve had the looks, the talk, the walk, the whole 9 yards. I am 110 saying that there was nothing. Eve was flawless. Eve was a 10 and a half, literally with no makeup, no nothing. 10 straight out the box. You see? So Eve had all of these things. Eve had the garden. Eve was in the Garden of Eden. Eve was with Adam. And I am sure Adam was an alpha male out of the box. Looks wise, status wise, he was the owner of the garden. I mean, he was in charge of the garden. He named all the animals. He had status. He had fame. It was Eve met him there. I mean, I'm not saying there's one word in the Bible. God, they both were made the same time and equally, but I'm not using this particular version as an illustration. I'm not saying that Adam too was most likely one of the most attractive men that ever existed on the earth. 15, you know what I'm saying? He didn't have $15 trillion, you know what I'm saying? But he had 15 trillion animals. You know what I'm saying? He had animals and he had all these things. He was famous because it was only him according to the scriptures. But anyway, the moral is, I am sure Adam physically was in great shape. Adam had the looks, 12 pack, you know what I'm saying? Abs, you know, the chisel jaw, cheek, and line and all that. And you know what I'm saying? All of that Adam had, and Eve was a part of that. However, when we look at the scriptures, so Eve was inside. Consider the Garden of Eden like saying, you know, a woman living in a mansion. A woman living in a mansion. She has everything. She has the most perfect, handsome guy and all that. And we see this happen all the time. Men, athletes, movie stars, millionaires have lost wives. We know this. So do not think that your paper is going to be the thing that's going to be your saving grace. It's going to save you. It might be an attraction. It might be a magnet, a lead magnet to getting women, but that is not going to be the thing that's going to sustain the relationship or keep the woman. Just like Eve. Eve had it all. Eve was in the garden. Eve had the looks. She had the man, the 10, the alpha male, and so forth and so forth and so on. However, the serpent came along. This is the part where I'm not going to go a traditional route because I know most of you guys are going to think I'm going to blame the woman, because I'm not here to blame any woman, because I don't take none of the stuff literal anyhow. I'm just using this as a metaphor because from my understanding, the spiritual concept of the Adam and Eve was the mind, the female side of the brain, the right side of the brain, and the male side of the brain was the left side of the brain, and the serpent, the knowledge and the wisdom, that the female side of the brain, that that side of the brain told the right side, the logic side of the brain what to do. And that is what that Bible story could be interpreted in many ways. However, man have misconstrued the story and made woman to be the downfall. However, from a spiritual, exoteric knowledge and understanding, that Eve represents the right side of the brain, the spiritual side of the brain, and the spiritual side of the brain should dictate to the left side, the logic side of the brain, and that logic side of the brain, the masculine side of the brain, the fleshly side of the brain should submit to the woman. And that is why Adam listened to the woman. So we're not talking about literal women here, not literal men, but that is the spiritual understanding of behind the story. Eve represents the spiritual side of the mind, and Adam represents the logic side of the mind, and each individual should follow the spiritual feminine side of the mind. So the serpent in this particular context represents knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Most individuals will wonder, why did God did not want the humans to have any knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. That's going to be another video that I'm going to create another day, because that goes into the Anunnaki and different things of that sort, which most individuals might not be aware of, where a lot of their Bible stories come from, such as the Garden of Eden, God being a jealous God, and the Tower of Babel, and the list goes on. Those are all Sumerian stories, some Sumerian myths from the Anunnaki and so forth and so on. But back to the story of Adam and Eve. So Eve had it all. So Eve told Adam to eat of this fruit, and they too were banished from the Garden of Eden. So when we look at this from a hypergamy perspective, Eve had it all. This is for you guys who think that the status and the having all the things, like Adam had the Garden of Eden and he was the perfect guy with the chisel jaw and so forth and so forth, and the list goes on and on. The 12 pack abs, couldn't put on a gain of Adam body might have been 1% body fat. I'm just, I'm doing too much now. But anyway, Adam had body 1% body fat. I been lean to the bone. You know what I'm saying? And I ain't talking about no skinny. I talking about fit, physically fit. So, but Adam and Eve had all of this, but what did she give it up for? She gave it up because the serpent came and he gave her knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. That is what I'm saying, that the serpent in most religions, the only religion that the serpent is considered evil is no picking on no particular person or no particular religion, is the Christians. The Christians is the only faith that look, or the only beliefs that sees the serpent as something negative. However, the serpent was someone in all religion, all other religion groups, the serpent was considered to be a wise entity. Every culture throughout history, the Egyptians, the list goes on. Look at the Egyptian headpieces. They wear the cobra, the snake, and so forth. And all throughout history, the serpent was considered a spiritual entity that is associated with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. However, Christianity took that information, and the serpent became the Satan and became the spiritual demonic entity that it was. And that is not the case again throughout all spiritual cultures. In Hinduism, whatever you could think of, the serpent is something that is admired and adored because it brings knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Again, that story about the serpent goes back to the Anunnaki, Iki being the serpent, and Enlil being God walking in the Garden of Eden. But again, most Christians don't know these stories. But again, I'm not here to talk about all that. I will probably talk about that another time. But again, so Eve gave all of that up because the serpent gave her knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So the same way you can have all of these traits and attributes, the 15, 15, 15, and you think that you're going to keep this woman, and then soon as the serpent, I would be considered the serpent. Say, for example, the gentleman, back to the story, because this is all related. The gentleman in the mall with the female. It took me some time to figure out why this gentleman responded with such hostility, and why he, kind of bodyguarded this female, and he was so protective of this female. It was like they were in the Garden of Eden. She was Eve, and the serpent, and he was considered Adam, and I was considered the serpent. So when the serpent came to Eve, and the serpent put the knowledge and the wisdom inside Eve mind, or he told her the truth, then she became aware and she became wise. So that was the same thing what happened in the mall when the gentleman, he may have been the lady, the lady, whether she was his female friend or she was his wife. Either way, she looked at him maybe in a superior way. She thought that he maybe had some type of, he was, spiritual, a teacher, whatever she thought. However, when I showed up, I think she saw something in me, and I think that gentleman realized that this guy is the real deal. I am this guy here. If this guy talks to my girl, or if my girl goes and watches this guy YouTube video, and my girl hears what this guy has to say, then her hypergamy will not be met. Her hypergamy will not be satisfied, because before she met me, he felt that he had some control or a spell or a hold over this female. However, he was afraid. It dawned on me after I analyzed his behavior. He was being rude and so forth because he wanted to get rid of me because he felt like if his girlfriend listened to what I had to say, then he would be considered less of, I guess, less of a, I don't want to say less of a man, but his his hold or his grip on her may have been relinquished, and that is why he pretty much wanted to disbar me from the area. He didn't want to give me a chance, even say one thing to the female. He didn't want me to talk because he was somewhat insecure. That was the conclusion that I came to. It was nothing to do with me. It was something to do with him. He felt that because again he had the locks, she had the locks, so he felt that if my girl hears what this guy has to say, she's going to realize I am a fraud or I am not as enlightened or whatever the case may be as he wanted her to perceive him to be. So that was the reason why he pretty much shunned me and pretty much rejected me so harshly. And again, I expected that type of behavior from a female, not a male. But again, it made more sense with the understanding that I'm trying to portray here today. So Eve, having all of these things, she gave it all up, even disobeyed God for the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And so the God would represent the religion, the false teachings, the different things of that sort. She gave it up for the truth. In this story that I'm saying, the devil or the serpent is not the bad guy. The serpent is actually the good guy. The serpent was the one that opened the eyes of man and gave man the opportunity to be aware, to be conscious, to know good and bad. Good and bad from what? Good and bad people, good and bad things, good and bad, to be consciously aware of the true self and the true nature. That is what the serpent did. So in this story again, the serpent is not a bad thing. The serpent is actually the thing that we all should try to achieve, the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, however, at all costs. So that is what Eve did. Eve sacrificed the Garden of Eden, the rich house, the big house that you're going to put the female in the car and the Birkin bag and whatever, the Gucci and the Fendi and whatever else you think that you're going to. Eve is an example to show you this is a hypergamous, this is a story of Eve's hypergamy. She was not satisfied. She felt she had the perfect man physically. She had the material things in the garden. She had the whole world, for that matter of fact. She had everything at the tip of her fingertips, and she traded it all in for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So again, if your pastor tells your wife to leave you because of your bad behavior, your pastor has more influence over your wife than you. You would lose your wife because your pastor satisfies your woman's spiritual hypergamy. So men, we tend to believe that we can only satisfy these women with our physical things, attributes, our looks, our talents, our fame, our sexual market value, things of that sort. Yes, these things are attributes that will sustain somewhat, but however, again, but only knowing thyself and allowing you to teach the woman or to be an example, if I may say, a true spiritual leader and lead the woman into righteousness, and only then the spiritual hypergamy will be taken care of, and then the woman would not necessarily be so much into the things that she once thought was going to bring her joy. Once her spiritual hypergamy is taken care of, is met, then she's not going to be so caught up in the material things or the greed, the lust, and the pride, and other things of that sort. So men need to become more spiritual leaders, more so first and foremost. We need to teach, we need to guide and teach our women things that they could become much more better women, so the women do not get such a bad label as they only want 50 and 50 and 50. And all women do not want 50 and 50 and 50. They think they want 50 and 15, but they do not need 50 and 15. What they need is spiritual guidance, spiritual awareness, spiritual teachings, and things of that sort. They do not necessarily, yes, they want to be looked at in some way, feel it's sexy and all that and so forth. And yes, they want to be adored and admired and things of that sort. However, what they truly need is different than what they want. You see, for example, we take another example I could think of. You see, the pastor is one example. King Solomon is another example. King Solomon was one of the richest men, and Solomon had how much, so many concubines and wives, 700 wives, concubines. Not exactly how much sure how many there were. However, there was not, these women were not only there because of King Solomon's riches and glory. King Solomon was considered one of the wisest men on earth at the time. So therefore, you see that having knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to teach someone, to give someone knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, that is what Solomon applied in his life, and that is what he gave his disciples, his followers, and the people that were around him. He taught his women things. He gave them knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and he made them better individuals. That is how you could obtain, or you could have sustained this particular type of lifestyle per se. You have to give something away that is not perishable, something that is going to last. So when you teach a particular person, be it male or female, something that no storm, no fire, no disaster could take it away, because it's going to be a part of that individual. And that is what I'm saying again. What women want is different from what they need. What men want is different from what they need as well. But I'm specifically talking about women because of what happened to me in the mall. So that gentleman, he was afraid. He saw me. When he saw me as the serpent. He was considered, and he said to himself, you know what? If this guy whispered his stuff into this girl, into my girl ears, she is gone. And I almost can guarantee you, she would have been gone, but that was not my approach. You understand me? I was not taking that route. But again, there is power in this spirituality, because that is the reason why the pastor has the spirituality, the power that he has. Solomon had the power. Look at, for example, real life example. You guys go on YouTube and look at guys like Sangu, the guru guy. If you look at him, look at how much followers he have. Look at how dedicated the women are in his life. Look at how they follow this guy. They bow down and put roses and flowers at this guy's feet. Does your woman put any flowers at your feet? Does your woman love you like that? When these women see Sadhguru, the tears come out their eye. They cry for Sadhguru. And the guys like Osho, rest in peace, Osho is gone now. Another spiritual great leader. For those of you who don't know Osho. But anyhow, look at Osho followers. Osho also had followers that was actually immensely involved in Osho's emotional life, his spiritual life. Women would pretty much dive at his feet and pretty much cry in his presence. That is what they did. That is what they did when they got in the presence of these men. So Osho, Sadhguru, look at Sadhguru, again, Solomon. Let's take, for example, even another example. Yes, Jesus Christos. Christos also had, only God knows how much women followed Jesus. The Bible said that there was many women that follow Jesus as well. It was not just men, 12 disciples. You know, the Bible, the male chauvinists tend to, not give women any credit. So they pretty much did not really put emphasis on the women that followed Jesus. But there was many women that followed Jesus. Why did these women follow Jesus? Because Jesus satisfied their spiritual hypergamy. There's one story, I can't remember what it was. One lady who washed Jesus' feet with her hair. How many of you guys, you go tell your girl, wash your foot with her hair? Come on now. Wash your foot with her hair? Boy, you must be crazy. You understand? Wash foot with her hair? No. So it's a reason, again, these men have this power over these women, because these men satisfied their spiritual hypergamy. So that is what we're talking about here today. We not only must try to be successful men monetarily with our finances and with our goals and dreams and aspirations, we also should try to obtain the best possible spiritual practices to lead our women into the way of righteousness and guide them so that they become more moral beings. And then, and only then, their true self can be seen, and we will tend to not see them as just being pieces of meat as we normally do, because all of us again have these spiritual principles and have the spiritual understanding of who we are inside of us. But again, without a guidance, that's why the Bible said, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. Without the knowledge and the understanding, therefore, these individuals will perish as well. So with that being said, again, spiritual hypergamy is a must. It must be fulfilled. It must be filled. And if spiritual hypergamy is not filled, you still, despite the fact having all of these attributes, the 15, 15, 15, having all these attributes, you still could lose your girl to someone who comes and sheds some spiritual light on your girl, because the soul desires more than material things. The soul seeks and wants and it just needs more than material things. So only the soul can be quenched through having a spiritual understanding of who and what you are. So my advice would be to, again, to guys who may not be do not have all of the attributes. They may not have the 15, 15, 15. However, you still need to work on yourself. You still need to work on yourself and try to be the best possible version of yourself. Work on your looks, work on your appearance, work on your career, work on your success, work on your discipline, work on all these things. Yes, you still need to work on all these things as a man. However, and you need game, again, first and foremost. I shouldn't say first and foremost, but you also need game too, because I don't care how much money you have, I don't care how sexy you are, I don't care what you have, you still will lose your girl if you do not have game as well. And for those who don't understand game, I'm not talking about playing games, I'm just talking about understanding the nature that attracts and repels women and things of that sort. Again, they call me Triple P for a reason. But anyhow, so what I would suggest is for guys, again, who do not have the attributes, who are not blessed with all of the attributes, all of the physical attributes of, the 15, 15, 15, I would highly suggest, and in fact, everyone should do these things. However, I highly suggest that you first and foremost work on your spirituality, your spiritual life, because it's free. You don't need to go to a gym to work on your spirituality. You just need someone to help guide you in the right direction. You don't need to pay any money. You don't need to do anything. This is just free. You can take the time. You can watch a couple of videos, watch a few of my videos, any videos you see online, someone that you resonate with, work on your spirituality, because when you meet a woman and the woman realizes that you have some sustenance, that is only then she's going to be fully attracted to you. And for you guys, go ahead and watch. I'm going to give you an example. If you guys go ahead and watch one of my very first videos again, I think it's How Did I Go? I think the title was How Did I Go 6 Years Without Sex and I Was Happy. And when individuals, so when women hear I went 6 years without sex, even men, even men, they don't even believe it's possible. Women don't even believe me because they think it is impossible for a man to go that long without sex, especially a heterosexual man, a man that's straight, a man that loves women and all that. They think it's literally impossible. Why do they think it's impossible? They think it's impossible because men show no discipline. Men show no control. When a woman meets a man, when I meet women and women understand what I'm really all about, man, it's almost over because they admire. Some people might laugh and so forth, but deep down inside they say, boy, I wish I could go 1 week. I wish I could go 1 month. 6 years with no sex and you happy and you still standing. That is admirable. So to women, that is a turn on, because most women say, wow, I know if this guy could go 6 years without sex, he's not gonna be. He has more. He has principles. He has standards. There's something more about him than actually the sexual desire. He feels that he knows who he is. He knows that he's not led by the flesh. I know if he could go 6 years, he's not going to be too interested in maybe sleeping around or whatever the case, because he has this under control. So it is admirable for you to go X amount of time were able to go without having sex. So when you work on your spirituality is going to give you the ability to work on some of your bad habits. Some of your bad habits may subside. Maybe you might start to drink less. You may start to smoke less. You may start to just do less harmful things. You might start to, go out less. A bunch of different things may transpire from this spiritual understanding, from your spiritual growth. And your female is going to look at it, your wife or your girlfriend is going to notice it as well. And she's going to be more attracted to you as well, for not only just having financial goals. So your wife is not only going to be happy that you are able to meet her financial goals, pay the rent and pay for the kids' food and things of that sort. She's also going to admire you more if you show some type of spiritual discipline. So I highly advise men not only to actually seek to obtain all these material objective things such as money, status, looks, maxing, and all of these things, because I guarantee you, you might have all these things and your girl could meet a per se lesser man, physically attractive man, and if that man sparks something in that in your female spiritually, you're gonna have a problem. And I guarantee you that that is going to be the case. So again, for those who may not have all of the natural attributes, I highly recommend that you guys go and seek some type of spiritual knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, so that you can bestow that upon your women, because most men do not do that as well. So with that being said, I hope this video is being very informative as usual. I thank each and every one of you guys for sticking around, hanging around. So please share, like, and subscribe. And also, if you are, please stop believing in illusions, delusions, and also believing in hallucinations. Triple P, and I'm out.